What is up, everyone? This is Soul with another video, although this is going to be one of the more rare and unique videos that I've done in quite some time. I am going to commentate on my experiences of the, what's it called again? The Dawn of the Infinite Mega Dungeon. This is going to be a semi-live commentary of my own run through this dungeon, but let me give you some kind of backstory, or let me prep you. But first, if you don't mind, like the video, subscribe for more content and other such things. Like I said, I'm going to be doing some commentary here as we go through the dungeon. I'm not going to go through the trash. I'm just going to go through the bosses and the mechanics, and I want to give my kind of perspective. Just so you know, I am not like a super duper high-end player. I am the type who does ahead of the curve. I do heroic raiding. I dabble in keys. At most, I get Keystone Master. And this, what you're going to see here, is actually my fourth run through this dungeon. I haven't done it on, I've never tested through it, but this is my fourth going on live. And so I want to kind of point out just what it's like for a player of I guess my caliber and a team of my caliber to go through this dungeon. Now, again, I want to give some context here. You'll see here on some part of the screen, you'll see all of our characters. There's me up top, I'm tanking. Brave Spear is one of our top pumpers in the guild. Avaris is kind of more recently switched to a warrior. He does pretty good. Shellin over there, I might refer to him as Blue throughout this commentary. He is on an alt, he's on a hunter, and Zark down there is one of our main healers. Now, between me, Shellin, and Zark, we've run this dungeon multiple times together. This is my fourth. And here, by this point, you'll see, or at least definitely from my observations, the experience that I get from previous runs, it's like adding 30, 40 item level. Our first run through here took quite some time. This one still took about like 2 or so hours because I was kind of coaching and training Brave Spear and Avaris over there, but they were able to pick up pretty quickly. So I'm going to, again, go boss by boss and explain just how it went, and also offer a little bit of perspective, how things, what are some pain points, a little bit of feedback here and there, and I hope this is of some use to either play in the background or to just kind of have passively playing while wondering, well, what do so-called normal people, what's their experience like through this dungeon? So I'm going to start fast forwarding, and I'm going to start jumping through the bosses. I'll have these all separated in the navigation, so go to where you want to go. All right, so first fight is well, it's pretty straightforward, kind of a tank buster too. First thing, there's a sequence of abilities that go out. First are a bunch of circles here that appear. They're cast on players, and they lay down some area denial. It comes in the form of the very obvious looking sand. And then there are going to be 3 leaps that this boss is going to do. You can see like the brighter circle there that shows you where it's going to be targeted. People can move their circle around, but once it lights up, it kind of locks down, and then that person needs to run out of that circle and not get hit. But you notice that I'm running into those pillars over there, and I try to catch whatever the heck it is that drops there, because whatever drops, it's a bomb and it just kills everyone. So we see pretty much that kind of same sequence all over again. And there's also periodically that ability there called Chrono Shear. It does a tremendous tank absorb. It absorbs a heck of damage. I take more damage, I believe, at the same time, and I usually want to pop like a pretty heavy cooldown whenever that happens. So that's pretty much how this fight goes. A sequence of one set of abilities after another. And so one thing that I noticed, and this kind of like trends throughout most of the bosses here, abilities happen pretty fast. There isn't a whole lot of downtime between things happening. So people are going to be constantly, not exactly on the move, but they're constantly thinking about, what's going to happen next. And while that can feel frustrating, I found that, you notice that I'm not using any boss mods or weak auras or anything like that. You very quickly start to get the hang of how these things go, because you start understanding the repetition of how things go. So let's commentate on a little bit more of what's going on. We got the circles. And then you start to kind of remember, okay, after circles, I'm probably going to get like the big leap thing happening right after that. So there it is. You see 2 circles right there. Players are trying to spread them out. You see the first one gets soaked. The leap happens. I run in and soak the thing again, so that way I can let the DPS do their thing. The third jump goes, and in this case, I have to hit my divine steed in order to get caught up. So ideally, if people are not spread out too far, it'll be easier for the tank to get in on that. Of course, anyone can do it too. I just found that from experience and all the wipes that I've had on this boss before, it might be a little bit easier to just have the tank do it because they're not doing much. Go ahead and let the DPS do their thing, not worry so much about chasing. And this boss goes down, I wouldn't say fairly quick, but well, I guess by comparison to other bosses, yeah, quick enough. Alright, so this boss has a pretty interesting gimmick to it. You can see it has this kind of rotating circle. You have a light zone, you have a dark zone, and different things happen depending on where you're standing, because in the dark zone, time goes slower, in the light zone, time goes faster. So first off, everyone has a debuff where they take ticking damage, and the damage is less if you're standing in the dark zone. If you're in the light zone, it doesn't exactly give you like a DPS increase, it just makes you move faster. But for the most part, being in the dark zone in most cases is going to be ideal for everyone. Because that way they can dodge those little ball things that are there. And for the tank, you can see right there, there's the tank buster. The boss will do like kind of a 2-hit super cone thing that otherwise would one-shot. It would almost look like it one-shots me if I happen to be standing in the light side, because he'll just go like boom boom and then I'll get vaped. But if I'm in the dark zone, then he'll do one cast and then he'll wait a few seconds for me to get out of the way before he does his second one. So it's not so bad. The one other thing too, I think you might have noticed earlier, there's a shockwave that comes out from people. It's a debuff, and yeah, so there it is. So there you saw one go out pretty fast, and this one's going out really slow, which does a lot of damage to people. If you're trying to run through it, tanks have no problem. Otherwise, you need to pop a pretty heavy defensive cooldown to get out of it. But for a fight like this, just like a lot of these fights, you can just kind of lust at the start, pump, go nuts, put in as much DPS as you can before people start dropping. And as for the mechanics, like many of the mechanics here, I'd say a lot of them are just avoidable, or they can be very much mitigated. There's a lot of fights here that you could just, deal with and take care of it with a small number of people. Actually, this particular fight, I only did it with the 3 of us here. The other 2 folks were dead, which is, unfortunate. But it just kind of goes to show that if you obey the mechanics and follow things and if your group has a decent toolkit, then you'll be able to survive it. A good chunk of these fights that I went through throughout the past 2 days, a big help was being a paladin, being able to help keep people up with all the extra healing that I do. Like you can see, like right over there on the details, I'm doing about 50k healing between me and whatever other extra healing that I'm doing onto the team. But otherwise, it's just this sequence right here. Take care of the debuffs, run, so you can see them run onto the light area. They're getting cleansed, they get rid of those debuffs so that they kind of safely pass through, and then they return over to the dark area, so that way they're taking less damage, as you can see like right over there. But yeah, we were able to end up 3-manning this boss. Kind of a pain, but just like any of the fights here, it just takes a little bit of practice to get used to the routine. And because of these sequences, they happen in fairly quick succession. It is fairly easy to remember. So this fight was interesting. This one has a unique debuff. I'm gonna refer to it as a potato. That people need to pass around. You can see right there, it's on Bracery right now. He's going to end up passing it to me whenever I tell him to. This one does require a good bit of coordination in part of the team, because they need to take that potato and give it preferably to the tank, so that way the tank can cleanse the potato or otherwise get rid of it after taking the cone that you'll see, and you'll probably see that a number of times throughout this recording. Yeah, see, like there we go, ta-da! Now this blob dude, and other ads throughout this encounter is going to lay down more area denial. Like you could see all that green gunk that's on there, and you also see me not really moving this ad very much, because whenever it moves, it lays down more poop. And you can see here that even though it turns into a dragon, it's still laying down this poop. So it's kind of a sequence of, hey, there's stuff happening, the potato needs to get past, appropriately, because if it is not passed and a person holds on to it for too long, they get mind controlled for a little while, and that's not good. So we want to try to have this thing passed around, bring it to the tank at the right time. You can see, like, right after we were dodging those things, I said, hey, pass me the potato, and then the cleave goes out right now, it safely gets destroyed, and then we just wait for nothing to happen. Now, you can just pass the potato around the whole time too if you want, and from there the healer just needs to keep healing it, because whenever the potato gets passed, there's extra damage that goes out, and again, it's something that the healer can possibly handle. But and I guess in the context of this, in I guess what's the hardest difficulty outside of very high keys, this is the way to do the mechanic. But I'm sure, like in heroic or in like lower keys, you're able to just almost ignore this thing, otherwise heal through it, and it'll be fine. You'll notice after a while, some of the green stuff, it does go away. It doesn't stay for the entirety of the fight, but it is in the tank's interest to do their best to not move too much. So there's a third phase here, where it's kind of sort of the same thing. There's some extra abilities that happen because you see that extra ad, but you also see me as the tank trying to move this boss, the one that can move and can be tanked. I'm trying to move it in such a way that it'll still leave plenty of room for DPS and other folks to move around and maneuver and otherwise not feel trapped, because that ad, it does move on its own. It can be pretty frustrating. Like, you saw me like just get breathed on all over it right there. But I'm trying my best to bring the ads together so that way we can kind of cleave them down. Every now and then someone is afflicted with that necrofrost thing over there, and DPS just needs to go over there and bring it down. Where it's convenient, I'll try to come over too, because hey, the ad happened to move there at the same time. But again, the more I move, the more poop gets dropped onto the ground, and we just need to get all of that cleared. And that pretty much takes care of that fight. I'm going to say this again later, but overall I did like all the fights, but this one felt exceptionally fun because there was a lot of extra coordination in part of the tank. Like, hey, give me the thing, give me the thing. I felt like there was a lot of control that I had between coordinating the group to pass me the potato or the debuff, as well as trying to control the movement of this boss. I remember in our first clear, there was just stuff all over the place because I was chasing the dude all around, and I didn't even really notice that. I didn't really notice how the ground was getting covered with the stuff until I really just started looking at it. So Iridikron is a pretty tight encounter with just like the other bosses, with things that happen at a sequence. First thing that happens is that someone's gonna have that big circle and they need to stand on top of Chromie so that way they stay safe. And then the rest of the group needs to collapse onto Chromie so that they can stay safe from a big buster that the boss is going to do, while the tank stands lonely on some other thing. This does like a bit of a pushback, and so you just want to make sure that you don't get pushed out of it, and then because if you do, you'll probably get your butt killed. So from here we can kind of pump, we can DPS for a little bit, and just kind of go nuts because we have a nice DPS buff for about 20 or so seconds. It'll help us get through this shield phase that we're going through with this thing called Earth Surge. Kind of, if you think of Rosagath and her phases, this is kind of the same thing, where we need to DPS the boss hard so that way this phase ends, but in the meantime there's damage going out. There are these things to dodge. You definitely want to dodge the shockwaves, and otherwise get off of the brown stuff. From here I tell everyone to collapse on a certain point because it's going to do a big old breath right over there, and all of us shift to one direction. In my case, we shift to our left. We all have circles around us, and so we explode and we spawn ads. And so I try my best to pick up all those ads with my trusty Fan of Shields, aka Divine Toll. I call it Fan of Shields, sorry. And then we smoke the ads. We make sure that they get interrupted through whatever the heck means that you and your team happens to have, whether it's Fan of Shields, Blinding Light, stuns, whatever. And then the sequence kind of resets from there. Someone is going to get afflicted with that debuff where they want to jump on top of Chromie again. Chromie does happen to move, so everyone just needs to be aware and get out of the way. So once they're on top of Chromie, boom, that thing goes out. Everyone starts to move over to Chromie, gets into their safe spots, wait until the Stonecracker, whatever it's called, hits us. Hopefully we don't die. And then we get the, 25 second buff. That gives us, I believe, an extra 50 or so % haste, which is very nice. One thing that other folks can do too, Chromie does need to get heals, and so if you happen to be a class or just anyone who can offer some self heals for Chromie, all the better. I have a feeling that I shouldn't really be doing, 300 something thousand, 500 something thousand, 5 million healing or something like that. You can see on details that I'm smoking the healer right now because I'm using my basic heal on on Chromie just for fun. And then you can see here we get on top of Diamond. I instruct everyone to go here, and we just coordinate from there. As you can see, the boss has a heck of a lot of life, more life than we could really handle doing. But the fight, it does not end here. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. As soon as we get the boss to about 90%, and you'll see that happen in just a moment. Come on, buddies. There we go. The ads disappear. Chromie teleports somewhere. She creates a dome. We get on top of it. We pop a bloodlust. We go nuts, and we need to burn the boss's energy. You can see right there, it's at 70, 68, 65. We need to burn his energy down to 0 before he finishes Cataclysmic Obliteration. That will one-shot us, and well, if we can get his energy down to 0 before then the encounter is over and we get loot. Tyr is a very straightforward boss with, guess what, a sequence of things that he does. The order isn't super fixed, but they're pretty easy to manage. All you really need to do is direct the rest of the team to stand kind of towards the outside of that circle there, while you take the boss and you take him in like either in a clockwise fashion. I mean, you can adjust the direction and the orientation however you like. This just happens to be the way that we do it. Now, the reason why we have people facing outside is because the boss, it provides area denial in the form of all that sand crap that it lays down, and so facing everyone over to the outside will make sure that we have the most room towards the end of the fight, because this dude has a lot of life. What he's doing right now, he's summoning balls, and we gotta catch these balls before they get to the center. If they get to the center, the boss gets a growing damage shield thing, and it's going to make the encounter that much longer and tougher, and we don't want to do that because we are slowly being denied area by this sand stuff, which does not go away. He does create a minimum shield, so kind of a bummer. Don't worry about that so much, but you can see here it's just a quick sequence of different things to do. There are certain debuffs that need to be cleansed by the heal. You can see it by that circle over there. There's that shockwave. That's one of the big area denials. There is a tank buster kind of thing, not really a tank buster, but it's just a knockback that can potentially do a lot of damage or otherwise knock you off if you're just standing in the wrong spot. But the big things I'd say are the circle and the shockwave. So like you see me kind of like moving out a little bit because I'm taking up too much space there, and now we have this sequence going again. But as for the sequence outside of this, it's just a matter of cleansing the circle debuffs whenever those happen to go out. I believe there's some extra damage that goes out whenever the cleanse happens. But otherwise, if everyone is kind of positioned in a decent spot, then it is the damage that goes out, it's not so bad. Like you can see those circles are going out kind of safely towards the back. There's the shockwave, people are just avoiding that. And then we're slowly going around this room. And that is basically the fight. I want to take special note of this particular room. This is a certain kind of gauntlet where you have to run all the way through without getting touched by like balls or shockwaves, and it can get a little bit tough. I admit that, again, this is my 4th run through, and what you may see here is the only time that I've gotten through. Every other time I have failed to get past this. Now, whoever does get past it, they're able to spawn a portal that everyone else can click on. And I believe that class abilities are in play. Supposedly, if I want to, I'm able to use my bubble. I'm able to use my Blessing of Spell Warding in order to avoid some of these things here. And you can see clearly that there's like a speed boost that lets me that lets me go through here faster, but I can't guarantee that you'd be able to get all the way through within those 10 seconds. But there you see, victory. The one time that I got through, whoop-de-doo. Morchie is pretty much the toughest fight in this instance. Or, well, I'm not going to say the toughest, but definitely the most frustrating. So she does a Sandblast. That is a kind of a tank shotgun that extends out, so people don't want to be caught up in that, although people end up getting caught up in it. She does an ability called More Problems. She creates clones of herself, and we need to identify the real Morchie, who is not wearing a hat, and then stand to her side or behind her, because she's going to do a big old breath that if you are not, kind of sort of to the side of her, like you don't have to, be all the way up where she is, but you can see right here, if we're standing around Moon or Diamond, then we're going to be, we'll be able to avoid the attack. It's just really hard because sometimes your nameplates and cast bars might make it hard to see. Some people just can't really see this very well, but this ability happens all throughout the fight while everything else is happening. You might have seen there that there are clones that spawn. Morchie will also make a clone of you, and that clone of you will chase you. Your objective is, whenever that clone is active, and it's about to go active in just a bit, here it comes, your objective is to kite your clone into those traps. Because if not, then the clone is going to give you a hug. You can see it has that kind of greenish, yellowish, poopish looking circle around it. And it does severe AoE damage if you are standing by it. Combine that with the, with having to avoid the Morchie cleave, as well as avoiding traps, as well as the tank shotgun, and you very easily have people die. And at least according to, from the clues that I've had, we have not been able to defeat this encounter with more than 3 people. It's always been with 3 people, because it's just easier. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird though, right? Because between the abilities that happen with her spawning traps, if there happen to be more people, more clones, that means more traps get eaten up, which, and so the math kind of works out where it's just easier. The encounter as a whole just becomes easier if there are fewer people who are out. So it's rough, I gotta say. Here's a sequence again. So we have familiar faces. You can see me kind of cutting. You can see that you can mark your target and it'll stay marked because it doesn't die. It just becomes inactive. And what you're able to do is, right here, I'm like using my blessing of freedom to get someone else. Why is it not on my bars? I don't know. You can put me on blast all you like, but you can see there are kind of fewer traps going out. I'm sorry, there are fewer traps available. And one thing that I do notice, it's a lot of chaos. Doing this I'm hoping that this really is the hardest version of this fight, because having all 5 people having to kite a clone over while Morchie is going to do her big tank buster, there's been more than a number of times that people have died because they're trying to dodge things or kite things around. They end up running behind me. Oh, I'm sorry, they end up running in front of Morchie, and then they get cleaved by her attack. So it quickly gets frustrating, and one reason why I feel blessed to be a paladin tank, so that way I'm able to help keep people up throughout this encounter. But yeah, I'd say out of all the encounters, this one is very interesting, but arguably the least fun out of all of them. Timelost Battlefield is an interesting one, and depending on your faction, you should pay attention to the screen right now and how things are looking. Now, towards the back of the room there, those are Horde NPCs, and the side that we're mostly fighting on has Alliance NPCs on it. The boss has abilities. He has a Shockwave, and it summons ads, and it also does a Blade Storm. And whenever Horde NPCs are killed by either the Shockwave or the Blade Storm, the boss gets a buff that will make him do extra damage to the entire party. So ideally, you want to make sure that people are positioned in such a way that they can bait where the Shockwave goes, and that they're able to kite the Blade Storm away from those NPCs. Now, of course, with the other ads coming out, it's very much an ad fight, although the ads go down fairly quickly. It just really depends on how the positioning looks. So it's really important for the tank to stay, for the most part, like on one side, and otherwise, whenever the boss does move away for like Blade Storm, just bring the boss back right where you were before, so that way everyone has decent control. I'd say this is the easiest fight out of all of these here. because you're able to avoid a lot of extra damage by taking out the archer, who does quite a bit of damage over time to people, and otherwise making sure that the caster's locked down. The footman doesn't really do much of anything, but very big deal. Make sure that the horde NPCs or the alliance NPCs, depending on which version of the boss you're fighting, because I'm sure that it's like the same thing if you're an alliance player or if you're an alliance leader, that's the same tactics apply here. So otherwise, very easy fight. Chrono Lord Deios is somewhere up there. Tank needs to pick him up, and this fight happens in a very fixed, well, it has very fixed position. You can see that we have some marks laid down, notably triangle over there, and then there's another mark that's kind of behind my character, where certain ads are going to appear that need to be smoked. But first off, we need to make sure we get a good pull by making sure the boss is in a decent position. How about I fast forward? All right, so here's the pull. I'm pulling him down. He's in a good spot. I bring the boss right over to this mark over here. This dude hits hecka hard, all right? He hits super hard as a tank. You wanna save cooldowns for some of the big tank waves that he does, but that's not even like the deadliest thing. What happens to the tank is kind of nothing by comparison. So there's an ad to pick up, or at least to have aggro on, because he does this thing called Infinite Blast that just nukes whoever the target is, preferably the tank in this case, but it's quite a bit of extra damage. And so it's up to DPS to really focus that thing, focus those timekeeper people down hard. And then move to the next position, because because these things spawn on a timer, and you want to make sure that you have enough damage to take down those keepers before another keeper or another set of keepers come out. Now the real fight is happening with either the DPS or the healers, because there are orbs that drop. You can see Shellon over there, he kind of ran off of his. There are 2 orbs that go out, and the objective is to slow the way that those, let me rephrase it. There are 2 orbs that drop. And if they both drop, then everyone dies, because when an orb drops, it does damage. But if a second orb drops within about 4 or 5 seconds, then it's going to do like tremendous damage and otherwise kill people. So what DPS or healers want to do is at least have one person stand under the orb, because that will cause it to slow down. And by slowing down the orb, you can let one just drop safely while another one is being slowed. You can see right there, you see that debuff falling off 2, 1, 0, and then it goes away, and then you can see the other person move off of it, and now we have the debuff again. So that's kind of the timing that works out there. And what we ended up doing is having only one person do it, if possible. And we just have that one person do it throughout the fight. So it's a lot of responsibility on that one person. If they screw up, it's a wipe. But you can see here, like, it's a pretty fast, it's kind of a fast encounter, but also not really. Because he saw us go through a couple of ad phases. Actually, let me rewind just a little bit so you can see like what happened a little bit earlier. So you can see like this is just after a set of 2 ads appears. The dragon is about to take off over here. But then we need to go pretty much all the way across the room. You can see there, like, someone's holding onto a ball. The second ball's about to go down. We're waiting for the debuff to go off, and then the healer will follow us. In the meantime, it's a little bit risky because DPS are going to may potentially be taking damage from the infinite blasts. Without a healer maybe on hand to do it. So that's where people may want to pop like a defensive cooldown or something like that to keep themselves up. And then from there are 2 more sets of ads to take out. The damage is still pretty high. There are some ads that spawn, and tanks will need to try pretty hard to keep them up, because the cleave damage may be potentially very high. Once this ends though, and both of those keepers are down, then the boss will come back down, and he also does this thing called Infinite Corruption, which is basically poop on the ground. Move, don't be in it, and it offers area denial. Those sands persist the entire time, and then he immediately lands, does a big breath that will really rock people if you let yourself get hit by it. But he still pops those orbs. So again, either the healer or ranged DPS need to constantly manage that and finish before the next infinite corruption sequence happens. We move, we move, we move. I reposition because there's a big cleave that's going to happen. The nuke happens, and then another set of orbs starts to come out. Any minute now, there we go. There's the infinity orb, and so off screen we have one of our two people handling the business, and then now we need to move again. So you'll notice that throughout this entire dungeon, it's a pretty quick sequence and a pattern of things that happen. And what I liked, and to be honest, I like this dungeon a lot. I think this was really cool. It was challenging. It was hard. It took us hours to get through it, and it's something that I'm really happy that I got through with our guild. Because I feel like I invested like a good bit of time with teaching people how to handle these encounters, and now I feel confident enough to at least speak to them and be able to easily coach and train people as we're doing these, so that way they can help figure things out, or even better, find other solutions that could be like a good idea. So you can see this fight, this last sequence takes a while. Like, we end up filling most of this very large room up with all of this stuff because everyone's moving together. We're trying to reposition, get ourselves back in a good spot. I'm trying to make it so that I am pointing this cleave stuff away. Pretty long fight. There is some RP that's going to happen a little bit shortly, but it's still like a pretty long fight, and very easily everyone can die if those orbs are messed up once. And that's kind of something that you notice in at least some of these encounters, that one person's mistake will get everyone killed. But it's not too frequent. A lot of these are a little bit of personal responsibility. If you don't kite those Morchie mobs, those clones, then you get killed. If you don't get out of certain things right away, then you're going to get killed. Or if you're standing in the slow zone when you have that debuff, the shockwave will go slow, and then you might risk getting a lot of people killed. I know that there have been complaints about how difficult this dungeon can be, and I am not fully in disagreement with it either. This does require a good bit of coordination that I think would be a challenge for pugs to complete. I don't have a strong opinion one way or another on whether or not there ought to have been like the heroic version that came out for this dungeon. I don't really have, hey, whatever you guys think, feel free to share your thoughts on that. But overall, let me pause here in case people don't want to get too spoiled on that. Overall, really happy with how this dungeon went. It was challenging. It gave us a lot to learn. It told me a little bit more about me and my team and how we handle things. And everyone was in pretty good spirits about it. So I at least want to try to clear this thing like every week. It was a lot of fun. And I hope that this was a little bit helpful for you, or at the very least was a kind of fun listen. So let me know what you think of these fights, whether you've done them or not. Do these look scary? Do you disagree that some of these encounters were very easy or difficult or harder to coordinate? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd always appreciate that, because it's been a while since I've done these kinds of videos where I do actual or actually flex what it is that I'm capable of here in this game. So anyway, you guys have a great one. Again, leave a comment. You have a great day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.